Hi friends, Krista here. Thank you so much for stopping by Books and Jams. Today we are here with my last list of favorites from 2021. I'm ready to dive in wholeheartedly to 2022, and I hope that I have so many good books to talk about at the end of this year as well. But this is my last pile of books to talk to you about that I really loved in 2021. This is again going to be a top 10 list. I have 10 books here to talk about. And the first two might be pushing it as far as mystery thriller. So this tack is all going to be mysteries and thrillers that I read throughout the year. It is not my go-to genre. I definitely lean more towards the mystery side of things than the thriller side of things. So you are not going to find a great list of thrillers to go read on this list. If you're looking for that, you'll need to go elsewhere. But I do have some great mysteries on here and some other fun things. Speaking of some other fun things, these first two books are a little bit pushing it. I will make a case for them being a mystery, but I would not have categorized them in the mystery thriller category. But I didn't make a top 10 list for literary fiction or sci-fi. And so they're going on this list, and I'm going to make a case for it. So at number 10, I have The Scent Keeper by Erica Bauermeister. In this book, we follow this young girl and her father who live isolated on this island. The dad is a collector of scents, and he has this wall of bottles that within each one is a specific scent. And he has this machine that he uses to collect these scents, which was very interesting to me. And they kind of live isolated on this island, which I always love, that kind of survival aspect, living alone. That has seemed to be a recurring theme in my list of favorites this year. So there's the mystery of these bottles and why is he holding on to them? The father doesn't really reveal all of his reasons and resources to the girl. But then one day something horrible happens and this young girl, I forget her name, Emmeline, and Emmeline is forced to leave the sanctuary that is their island and kind of go out into the real world, if you will. So she starts to uncover some secrets and learns a lot more about who she is and her specific abilities, because her father has trained her to have this enhanced sense of smell. And so in the real world, she meets a lot of other people, kind of has a found family aspect, but she also has this amazing ability to smell and detect scents. And how does that affect her life in the real world? And can she handle being amongst so many other people when she has lived all of her life isolated on this island? So there's a little teeny tiny bit of a mystery. Again, I wouldn't classify it as that, but I absolutely loved this book. I loved it because it was so different from anything else that I've read this year. I fell in love with Erica Bauermeister's writing. I loved the characters. I loved the strangeness of the story. It was so unique, and it just needed to be on one of my favorites lists of the year. So I put it here at number 10. Speaking of books that don't exactly fit the mystery thriller category, is my number 9, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I love this book so much. It's definitely a sci-fi. In this book, we have Ryland Grace, who wakes up on a spaceship and he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know what he's doing in space. He doesn't know why he's there. So herein is the mystery. He has got to start racking his brain, trying to instigate some more memories to figure out why he's in space, how to survive in space, and what is the purpose of being there, and how is he going to do it? So all of these things are why I'm like smushing it onto this mystery thriller stack. But Andy Weir has a wonderful way of writing humor and science and characters that you just fall in love with. There are some wonderful surprises along the way. It is heartwarming by the end. I feel like those who don't read a lot of science fiction could read this and really enjoy it, because I did. It does get a little sciencey, but I feel like I learned a little bit, and I didn't feel like if I got lost in the science, I was getting lost in the story. I felt like they were almost two separate things, because he does explain a lot of the scientific parts of things, but it didn't lose me. I didn't get lost in it. So this deserved a spot in my favorites list as well, even though it's not exactly a mystery thriller. There is a mystery there. Who is he? So we do also travel back into those memories and discover, why is he in space? What is the point? And yeah, there's a big mission. It's just fun. I was along for the ride and I loved it. Okay. Now on to books that I would absolutely classify as mysteries or thrillers. Number 8 is Force of Nature by Jane Harper. I just love Jane Harper. She is an Australian author who writes books set in Australia, and she's fantastic at setting. And in this one, we are kind of up in the wilderness, up in the mountains almost, at this place that hosts all these retreats, like wilderness type retreats. We follow this group of office workers who are divided into like the females and the males, and they go off in their separate ways, and they don't all come out. The men arrive back at the retreat center. The women do not arrive at the selected time that they're supposed to arrive back. And when they do arrive back, they're not all accounted for. So Erin Falk, one of the characters who was in The Dry, the first book that I read by her, is also one of the detectives in this one. And so there's that little companion novel aspect to it. So we follow Erin Falk and his co-worker, his partner, as they try to figure out what happened to this woman. So there's like a lot of interviews and there's a lot of setting, and there's just like a little, not creepy, I wouldn't say, but a lot of just wondering who's telling the truth and who's not telling the truth. And I really enjoyed it. So yay for Jane Harper. I think I liked The Dry better, but I thought this was really well done as well. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It's not a 5-star read, but it was a 4-star read. Number 7 is Pardonable Lies by Jacqueline Winspear. This is a Maisie Dobbs novel. This is the 3rd in the series. And we follow Maisie Dobbs, who is not an amateur detective. She actually is, that's her profession. She's a private investigator, if you will, detective. I forget what her title is. But she gets hired to solve mysteries. Not always murders, but mysteries. She's hired by Sir Cecil Lawton, whose wife on her deathbed convinces her husband to promise that she'll find out what happened to their son. Their son was proclaimed dead from the Great War, the First World War, and the wife lived always believing that that was not what happened. She did not believe that her son actually died, and she wants proof of what happened to her son. So in the midst of trying to find out what happened to this young man, Maisie has to kind of face some of her own past. She was a nurse during the war, and she has to go back to a part of the war or place in the war where she was serving. And it brings up just a lot of really difficult memories and moments from her past. And so I really appreciated that the mystery, while a big part of this book, wasn't all that's here. So Jacqueline Winspear also really dives into the different characters, and in particular into Maisie's character. And we learn a lot more about her and her past in this one as well. Something else that I love about Maisie is that she has a really strong sense of intuition, and it's almost supernatural or I don't know what you would call it, but it's almost unbelievable. But it plays a part in her solving crimes. And I love that she doesn't just look for the facts, but for the reasons behind things. And it really goes deeper into the whys and not just the hows of all of the mysteries that she tries to solve. So I really appreciated this one. I liked that it was World War I. I like that it's a historical mystery. I'm just having a lot of fun with this series. So we'll plan to continue. I think I own book 4, and then I don't own any of the rest, so I'll have to get them from the library. But then we have number 6, which I would call a literary mystery. It's Miracle Creek by Angie Kim. This one was so different. We have in this one a family that owns this submarine that's not in the water, but they mimic the same kind of pressure situations. And it's supposed to be this healing tank. They say that they can have positive impacts on your life by this highly charged, oxygenated environment. And one day the tank blows up. So there's this mystery, and it's actually, a lot of the book is set in the courtroom, and we're kind of going back and forth between the courtroom and people who have visited the tank and the people who were in the tank that day, and the family who owns it, and the dynamics between the husband and the wife and their teenage daughter. So we kind of learn all about the surrounding mystery of what happened that day. Was it an accident? Did somebody purposefully blow up the tank? Yeah, it was very interesting, very different from other things that I have read, and I loved it. I thought it was well done. I thought it was written really well. I was invested. I wanted to know who did it. Why did it happen? yeah, I needed to know all the things, and I thought it was great. So that's number 6. That was number 6. Number 5 is a Jamie Jo Wright book. This is one of the authors that I wanted to read in 2021, and I'm so glad that I did. This is my favorite of the 2 that I read. This is The Reckoning at Gossamer Pond. The 2 books that I've read by her have a dual timeline that is about 100 years apart. And so we follow a current day timeline of Gossamer Grove and this young woman, Annalise, who knows that there are some secrets in the past of this town, and she is determined to uncover them, and goes to the newspaper office and tries to look into the archives and things. And she's trying to unravel what happened in the past. And then also in 100 years earlier, there are these twin revivalists who show up outside of Gossamer Grove and kind of throw the town into chaos. And there are some who are like adamant followers of these revivalists, and there are others who are very skeptical and concerned even about the way that things are being done at these revival meetings. There are these notes that start being delivered to the newspaper foreshadowing or foretelling of a death that happens shortly thereafter. And so how are these notes arriving at the newspaper? Who knows what's going to happen? Like, who is this that knows what's going to happen before it happens? Because these few deaths that happen seem like suicides, but is that really the case? Because it was predicted or told at the newspaper office. So very strange. It had a lovely, creepy vibe to it. It is Christian fiction, so it's not going to go off in wonky, weird places. But I really liked it. It is definitely a different type of Christian fiction than what I normally read. So I really loved that one. I think I gave it 5 stars. Number 4 is maybe the only true thrillery book on here, and that is Simone St. James, The Sundown Motel. I just recently read this. I think, was it October that I read it? Or November? I don't remember. I just read it recently and I loved it. If I'm going to read a ghost story, I'm going to read a Simone St. James ghost story. So this one was delightfully creepy at the beginning. There are ghosts involved at the motel. In this one, we follow a young woman whose aunt has gone missing a couple decades earlier, and she is determined to find out what happened to her aunt. And so she kind of tries to follow in her footsteps, which lands her at the Sundown Motel, working the night shift. And why? Like, who would do that? And there are some mysteries that unravel throughout. There are people in the town who are involved or seem to be involved. And it's just this young girl following in her aunt's footsteps. And I loved it. I thought it was so well done. I always say Simone St. James is really good at kind of peeling back the layers little by little by little. So you don't get a good big overview picture at the beginning. You're just learning a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And I loved it. I'm along for the ride. So much fun. Then at number 3 is a book that I don't have. I would like to own this one, but it is a totally different vibe. It is an almost humorous story called Finley, Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimano. This was such a fun story. Finley is a single mom. She just had divorced or is in the process of divorcing her husband. And she kind of comes across as a bit of a hot mess. I think she's also a writer. And at the beginning, it kind of opens up with her house in chaos. So she's trying to finagle all of her kids and breakfast and holding the baby and all of these things and talking to her agent on the phone. She meets her agent at a Panera type place. I don't know if it was exactly Panera, but to talk about this book that she's supposed to be writing. And she's like a mystery thriller writer. So she's talking about potential storylines and talking about these characters as if it's kind of real life. And someone overhears her conversation and misunderstands what's going on and thinks that Finley is a hitman. So Finley leaves her meeting with her agent and finds this request in her purse to a promise of a whole lot of money and a request to kill somebody's husband. She's like, what on earth is this? Is this a joke? Is this real? What is this? And so the rest of the story is just her trying to figure out what is going on. She kind of has a sidekick throughout the story, and the mob gets involved at one point, and it's just this comedy of errors almost. It is so fun. I was along for the ride. It was a delightful murder mystery. Is that a thing? A delightful murder mystery? I found this to be delightful. And I'm very eager to read the second book, which I think is out already or coming out soon. I'm just really excited for book 2. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. I just know it. And then in the number 2 and the number 1 spot, I have 2 that are by the same author. So I'm going to kind of do them together because it's really hard for me to split these up. But I read books 8 and 9, book 8 and book 9 in the Louise Penny Armand Gamache mystery series. I've talked about this one before, The Beautiful Mystery. I think it was in my top books of the first half of the year. This was fantastic. What I loved about this is that music was a big part of it. This takes place not in Three Pines, where like this fictional village in Canada where most of her books take place, but this one takes place at a monastery, kind of an unknown monastery. These monks have left the typical Catholic church and have formed their own monastery, but it also tracks the history of Gregorian chant, and this monastery is trying to hold on to that musical tradition, and a murder happens at the monastery, and Armand and his team, Jean-Guy, actually only the 2 of them are called in to figure out what happened, obviously. So I loved that musical aspect, but I also love this overarching story. This is one of those series where you do have to read them in order because there's this overarching story that happens, and the relationship between Jean-Guy and Armand is a big part of this book, and the way that it left off had me in tears and angry, and I was like, what? Where are we going to go? How is this going to be resolved? So I was very, very invested in this book, and I thought it was beautifully done as always. But then a couple months later, I picked up the next one, How the Light Gets In. And I should say, so far I have listened to all of these on audio. Ralph Cosham was the narrator for the first bunch of her books. Still by number 9, he's still the narrator. I know that he passed away at some point and someone else narrates the rest of the series, so I'm not sure when that happens, and I'm going to be really sad because I just love his narration of them. They do take place in Quebec, which is French-speaking part of Canada, and I am not very good at reading or pronouncing French words, so to be able to hear them is wonderful to me instead of having to try to figure it out on my own, because there is some French interspersed in there. Not a lot, but Armand speaks French as well, and it's just in there. This one does carry on that storyline that kind of left on almost a cliffhanger at the end of A Beautiful Mystery, and was a big part of this story, almost a bigger part than the mystery itself, because I can remember all of that aspect of the story, but the mystery, I'm like, wait a minute, what was the mystery? But in this one, a child star who was part of one of those, like, I don't know, John and Kate plus 8 type of reality TV shows. There was this family that was kind of like that, a big family, lots of siblings, and very famous. They had kind of like dropped off of the spotlight for a long time, and they're all much, much, much older now. There's only a handful of them, or there's only a very, very few of them left, but there's a mystery surrounding that family. And Armand, of course, it's called Into Three Pines. Myrna, who owns the bookstore, is connected to the story as well. And we're back in Three Pines, which I loved. They're just so good. I feel like a lot of people have said that this is their favorite of the series, and it was fan-stinkin-tastic. But I don't know that I could choose between these 2 right now for which one is my favorite. So that is number 2 and number 1. I love them. I love them so much. And I kind of love that I'm not reading them one right after the other and flying through the series. I'm taking my time with it. I started, I think, 2 years ago, and now I'm on book 9. So I'm doing pretty good. I read a couple a year, 2 or 3 a year, and I'm just taking my time through it. I think there are 17 now, so I've got a ways to go. But here is my list of top 10 mystery thrillers, minus Finley Donovan. I don't own that one. And minus kind of these 2. They're not really mystery thrillers. But did I make a case? Close enough. We're going to call it close enough. Because I don't read a ton of mystery thrillers, having 2 that don't quite fit is okay. But there's a top 10 of more favorites from my year of 2021. I would love to chat with you about any of these books. Did I get you to add any onto your TBR? Have you also read and loved any of these? Did you read some and have different feelings from me? I'd love to hear that as well. Let's chat down in the comments below. If you don't know, I love talking with you down there. I do try to respond to all of my comments. I'm a little bit behind right now, but I'm going to get caught up. And that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you watching my channel. It means so much to me to have you here with me. And I love you so much. And I will talk to you in another video very soon. Bye.